but we're going live. It's preparing the live stream.
Why do we sit here in silence every time we're waiting on this?
We don't need to, yeah.
Well, we are live.
I don't know. I know we want to catch up and let people check in and stuff, but I've always been very silent. And then I watched one of the episodes. I'm like, we're just sitting there staring at the cameras. I'm like, let's at least talk.
Yeah, that is totally fine. I'm going to put that on the link on social media right now.
I'm usually silent because I'm trying to focus and make sure I log into the right account and stuff.
Okay, so I won't start asking you a bunch of questions right now to break any of your concentration.
Well, we should be set. Tom and Tim are already in the chat.
Hey guys. Hello, so, Kenzie's there. Hello.
So we are live, and as usual, we're going to give everybody a minute or so to get logged in and stuff. So yeah. But yeah, hi Tom, hi Tim, and hi Kenzie. Sorry.
Put it here too. Okay. Cool. So hello, Jojo. Hello, everybody. As we are getting ready to start things officially, we have some pictures as well tonight of the various home haunts. So Carmel put together a slideshow with some pictures from Ted and ours. And so we'll try to give a little bit of a visual as we go along. And as there are questions that arise, obviously feel free to throw them in the chat. It's obviously a little bit of a different type of week, and I know we're excited about some of the plans for this week, and also we'll talk about plans for next week. There's something in particular I'm really excited about next Thursdays, which will be a return to Scary Farm, but I'm excited about the topic, so we'll talk about that as well. Hey, Sarah. Hello from Reichland Asylum. Josh is there too. Hey, Josh.
Hey, guys.
So yeah, feel free to go ahead and continue to throw questions in the chat as we go along, and also feel free to talk amongst yourselves as well. Steve's Haunted Yard there. Hello. And we'll try and keep an eye out for them, but it'll be a little different for us this side because we are going to have the some pictures up as we go along of some of these home haunts.
So yeah, this is the first time we're doing that, so we'll see how that all works.
Yeah, it should be fun though, I think. So
yeah.
Hey, Michael Bondi here.
Hi there. So it's a couple minutes after.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the intro, and we will jump into things here. Welcome to Parks and Cons, the companion podcast to the parksandcons.com website and YouTube channel. We discuss cons, theme parks, collecting, and other fun stuff. It's April 30th, 2020. I'm your host, Sean. I'm here with Carmel.
Hi there.
And Ted.
Hello.
Parks and Cons, your on-spot podcast where we take you to heart of the action, best conventions and themed entertainment events around. Today, we are talking home haunts, specifically home haunts in Santa Clarita, even more specifically, home haunts as part of a big night that our friend Tim Fowler helped facilitate from the farm. We're really excited to talk about the whole notion of this night, of kind of how it is, and I think we'll have a lot to share from both sides. Ted, this is the first time he's podcasting and talking about his experiences that night. We talked about it on a podcast back in October, but we'll obviously talk more about the home haunts, but also we're going to share a little bit of kind of just the whole, how we kind of approach home haunts, where they fit in the overall of our season. And so we'll be getting to all of that as we go along. For those of you that are listening to this audio only on the podcast, just so you know, we do this as part of a live show every Thursday night right now with Ted Dougherty. So feel free to jump in with us. We are excited. Next Thursday night, we are going to be doing a walk in the park. This is a new series that we've been doing of podcasts where we take a specific part of a land and then kind of do an audio walkthrough. And so next week, we are going to be doing a walk in the park with Ted as he kind of takes us on an audio tour of parts of Ghost Town. And so we're going to be doing basically a Scary Farm version of, if you listen to what Jonathan Green did with us for Universal Studios, or our Galaxy's Edge one that we did, where we get a little bit of the visuals, or I'm sorry, the audio tour of it, and we'll kind of make our way through there. So I'm really excited about that one. So we'll talk more in the closing with that too. If you are joining us on YouTube, please feel free to jump in the comments there. We see lots of people there. We've been greeting you as you come in. Feel free to throw questions in and we'll try to address them as we go. Also, please like the video if you are listening in today, and don't mind to do so. We definitely appreciate that. So as we've started out the last few episodes, we're during this very strange time, we're starting out podcasts with our Dose of Hope, which is where we list a thing or two that we've just come across on the internet that gives us a little bit of hope, something interesting, something fun that's out there. And a lot of time, or really all of the time, these are things that probably aren't going to be big enough to fit in as a podcast segment or something. They're just kind of quick hits. So first up, in the home haunt, or really it's a professional haunt and a home haunt that we have highlighted here today. So in the professional realm, All Saints Lunatic Asylum up in Apple Valley, they made a pretty cool announcement. I thought this was pretty neat. We're so proud of all of our graduates. Thank you for your sacrifices to keep your family safe through this crisis. If we're allowed to open this summer, we'd love the chance to honor you with a grad night all of our own. Bring your diploma and ID to be a guest for free. Keep following us for more information. So that's really kind of a neat thing. They try to open up throughout the year for different types of events, and I thought that was a really neat thing there to do for graduates. And then over in Rancho Cucamonga, just down the street from our friends over at Helser Cemetery, Sam Haynes Lot, J-Dub over there's just been posting a ton of stuff. You can find him at Sam Haynes Lot on Instagram, corpsing and all sorts of cool stuff for his home haunt. And somewhere on one of the threads where I've seen it said it's planning for a big Halloween with their yard display. So just two kind of fun things that we wanted to throw in the Dose of Hope. They're things that give us a little bit of a bump of energy. I know when we see stuff like that, anything that's not a cancellation is always a good thing, but particularly when it's something coming up ahead of us. So wanted to recognize those and thank you. Once again, if you guys have anything that you come across that you think should be included in that segment at the top of podcast right now, just shoot us an email or hit us up on social media and let us know about it. So with that said, once again, we would like to welcome and thank Ted for joining us. This has been a really fun series. We've had a lot of fun. We met up this week to plot some things for the weeks to come, and very excited about that. That was fun as well. But before we get too deep into things, Ted, do you want to give the folks listening, in case maybe they're not familiar with you, it might be their first episode tuning in or something, a little bit of your history?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Ted Dougherty. I'm a writer, producer, and director for special events, Halloween events, mainly theme parks and immersive types of experiences. I've worked creatively with a lot of different folks, a lot of different companies, not Scary Farm, Universal Studios in Hollywood for their Halloween Horror Nights, LA Haunted Hayride, Queen Mary's Dark Harbor, many, many more. And, it's so fun to be able to do something like this in particular today, because we're talking about home haunts. A lot of times, any of us folks working, professionally in the industry, it's really hard to kind of duck away and see what's going on outside of the particular events and venues that we're working in. And what I've done is been very fortunate to sort of prearrange certain days and times to step away from these events, to be able to go see what other folks are doing. And when we're talking about home haunts, especially in Southern California, there's so much talk about sort of this haunt community, right? And I think they make up such a huge portion of that community that in some ways, they're just as important to that community than any theme park, any individual, or anything like that. So I think it's really important for me to see what they're doing, to be able to enjoy what they're doing. And really, if you want to talk about the spirit of Halloween, I know we're going to get into it today, but these people are truly capturing it. And when I've said things like, home haunting in some neighborhoods and stuff are replacing trick-or-treating in the spirit of Halloween. And we really kind of got a taste of that. And so super, super excited to talk about it, because it was a huge adventure that we went on when we went and visited Santa Clarita.
It was a lot of fun. And for us, if you're not as familiar with our background, we love covering Halloween stuff. We obviously cover lots of theme park and pop culture convention things. So for Halloween, for us both, has always been a fun thing, or at least for the 25 years or so. But 2013 and previous to that, I would say probably 85% of our experiences with Halloween were not Scary Farm. There's the occasional Queen Mary and the occasional professional haunt or volunteer or home haunt in our local area, but it wasn't like we sought them out in a really aggressive way. And then when we started covering parks and things like that in 2014, we made it a goal to start seeing more. And that year, I think we did about 10 different things. And that felt like a lot. What's that?
I was going to say, which we thought was a lot.
Yeah,
back
that
then,
seemed like
so.
a lot to us. And we were like, wow, there's so much stuff to do. And we did that. And then in 2015, we, every year as we try to do, it's like, okay, let's see if we can do a little bit more. And I remember in 2015, we really got introduced to a lot more with Halloween, from hanging out with Rick West and Johanna Atalano with Theme Park Adventure. And we would hang out at, let's say a media event at Horror Nights or something like that. But then as we talked more about other things out there, and I remember asking Rick early on in the Halloween season that year, like, what's your favorite thing during the Halloween season? And he said, oh, I just can't wait for the home haunts. And it was like, oh, really? It's like the home haunts are like the highlight. Because again, it's like, we're at Horror Nights, we're at Scary Farm. It's like, well, that's really the highlight to you. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And it gives us something to look forward to. But I didn't know I had no clue the level of things. And so each year we would, visit more and visit more. In 2018, we visited 63 different types of haunted attraction locations, Halloween event things. So that includes something like Scary Farm, and that includes something like a home haunt, like we have our friends from Rotten Apple are in the chat here, or Grimwood Hollow, or the farm, and these types of places all in making up that list. And then last year we really went all out. As we got to the last couple of weeks, we saw we could really probably break 100, and we visited 102 unique stops. And of those,
well, and to clarify, by unique stops, we'd count like Scary Farm as a whole, just one. So we don't count each maze as an individual. So Horror Nights is one stop, and Queen Mary is one stop. So we're not counting individual mazes as a stop. So.
Yeah, or Terror in Train Town is 2 different mazes, but that's one stop. Or Coffin Creek is 5 mazes, but that's one stop as well. But last year, 102 unique events, 115 total stops. For us to count something, just so we know, because again, we thought this podcast, it's really a lot of like, what did Ted see and what did he think? And then for us a little bit to go behind the scenes, because we don't normally talk about these things. But for us to talk about, or for us to count a haunt, it needs to get us social posts. So we need to put it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all 3 of those for it to count for us. And the only things we put on there are things that we believe have that, and I always kind of say it's like that extra oomph, so it's not something that, I guess we always liken it something, it's not something Carmel and I could construct ourselves at our house. We couldn't go and buy all the inflatables. I mean, we saw some things last year that were just incredible in terms of like the way they put together their inflatable displays. But we said, well, at the end of the day, Carmel and I could do that. So even though it was really neat, we don't count that type of thing. But we do count displays. We count any sort of haunted attraction thing that we go to, even if it doesn't have a name. If it's, like I'm thinking something like that Scooby-Doo one that, we found out in LA, and so many others, and we'll call it the Scooby-Doo haunt or something like that. So just because they don't have a social media account doesn't mean we don't count them. So last year, to give some context, of the 102 unique stops, 51% were yard displays and 16% were home haunt walkthroughs. So overall, 67% fall into what we're really talking about here. A vast majority of our season really is those last 3 weeks as the home haunts get up and running, and we're able to see those. After that, Scream Parks, things like Not Scary Farm, Dark Harbor, all of those count for 16%. Individual pro haunts count for 9%. Immersive entertainment, things like a Creep LA or a Delusion, count for 6%. And then Halloween shows, something like, let's say, a Salem's Market that's specifically in the Halloween season or something, counts for 3%. But so the vast majority is really what we're talking about tonight. And if this is the first time you're tuning into us and you're interested in any of this stuff, especially in this quarantine period, there's lots of stuff. If you're interested, there's 32 Halloween podcasts on our pod. If you want to go back and look at what we had in September and October, there's 32 shows
just
there.
in 2019.
Just in 2019, yeah. There's 93 Halloween haunt videos. 37 of them are home haunts. So we really try to just get out there, see as much as we can, gather it up, document it, and to share it as much as we can. So that's kind of what our goal is each season, is to see as much of the cool stuff and try to share it with people that may, maybe they live in Wisconsin and they're not able to come and see the beautiful work that we get to see, because I always know that we're so spoiled out here with the stuff that we get to see during the Halloween season in all of these fantastic home haunts. So as we approach them the night, we're going to kind of talk about and we'll kind of go through each. So like we start at the farm and we'll go through that. One kind of last kind of side thing in terms of as we talk about these and something. So for Carmel and I, as we're covering home haunts, the one thing we learned a couple years into the process that's really interesting, and a lot of people don't know about home haunts or about us covering home haunts, is really no surprise if you think about it this way, but every home haunt is like its own little business in a way, not charging money, obviously, but in terms of like it's governed in different ways. And what I mean by that is, we went into it thinking like, well, of course, every home haunt would want people to see it. They'd want as many people as possible to see it. They'd want, that extra. And a lot of home haunts don't necessarily always want that. So it's always kind of a matter of kind of checking in with the attractions. And do they want video? Do they want, podcast stuff? And kind of some you can get, some will be very clear, and like some will message us and ask us to come out to do stuff, and others will be like, oh, we got enough people in the local neighborhood, we don't want to really spread the word, we want to keep it quiet, that's why we don't have a name for it. And so that always is something that we have to kind of weigh. And so as we talk about the haunts tonight, as we're going through as well, when we're trying to fit in so many, because in this last year and the year before, Carmel really tries to set up the schedule. So she has this big matrix of all these things. And do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that in terms of kind of the strategic side of like when we do Santa Clarita, or I mean, in this case, it was very clear cut that there was a party, there was a function that Tim put together, but in general.
Sure. So really quick side note, I'm getting over a migraine today. So if at some point I check out or I'm just not as talkative or something, that's why. It's not that I'm not excited and interested in stuff, but I'm clearly excited because even though I'm not feeling totally great, I'm still here, but so I didn't want to miss stuff. So, so apologies in advance if something along those lines happens. That being said, in regards to the planning the stuff, I mean, we've really reached a point where planning as much as possible, as early as possible, has really kind of been very helpful. So we actually have gotten the last couple of years to the point where we start scheduling our stuff shortly after the end of the season so that we can remember and better map things out and better plan things, how to be more efficient with our time and stuff. And so 2 years ago, I guess we had realized, or 2018, we had realized that there was a lot going on in Santa Clarita, but especially in that weekend before Halloween. And so that we could really make a very full night if we set Santa Clarita up as going that last weekend. And so that worked out with Tim's planning and stuff. And so that one just kind of made sense that we could really knock out a lot if we waited until that last weekend to get out there. And then besides that specifically, I mean, it's really just a matter of mapping things out and becoming more familiar with where the haunts are and what the haunts are that are running and who runs early and who has haunters nights and who's open midweek or whatever. And it's really a matter of just plotting out and becoming more familiar with everything. Thanks, Diane. I will feel better, hopefully. I am feeling better than I was earlier. Anyways, but so yeah, it's just a matter of becoming more familiar and really trying to be efficient with the mapping things out. So I, of course, use Google Maps a lot and map things out and figure out how to minimize the total drive time between all the places, and then reaching out to the haunts ahead of time. As press, we can do that and see if there's a way to make things more efficient when we arrive. If you're not press or media, then it's going to be more challenging just in general. because these the home haunts are so amazing and the neighborhoods generally know about it. So a lot of them have really, really long lines to get through. So I would think if we weren't press or media, that at most maybe we could probably do like 3 a night would be my guess.
Well, I think it depends with and that's the thing, the yard displays like this night we're going to talk about was really unique because we had never done as many walkthroughs in one night of home haunts ever before. So it was unique even for us in that it was one thing to fit in, let's say, 8 yard displays, because obviously you don't have to wait in line. You don't even need to talk to anybody. You go up and you do what you need to do. So that was a very unique thing. But yeah, I mean, Carmel plans it literally down to the minute of like, it's 4 minutes. It'll be a 2-minute detour to go to this one. If we do this one, it'll be a 1-minute detour if we go to this one. And so the whole night is like plotted out. And sometimes we'll get messages ahead of time where somebody may say, oh, you know what, we're actually going to be closing early. Or what was it, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I know we were running late and we did reach out to Tim at the farm. And it's like, man, we're really like, we're going to be like 30 minutes later, whatever it was. And they were very kind to stay open so we could come and do video and things like that. But yeah, in order to get to the numbers, there's a lot of planning that goes into it. And it sometimes you go to places and they're just dark. You know, the SoCal Haunt List is a great resource. If you've not been to some of these home haunts before, it's a great resource. But there are some that will drive, 45 minutes towards something and we'll get there and it's just dark and it's supposed to be listed. And, there's nothing that the people that run the list can do. It's just those things happen sometimes. But in general, kind of organizing the time seems to help a lot. And so then again, in the case of this night, what was really neat and interesting is Tim Fowler, again, of the farm, who'd moved out recently to Castaic out there, and he had planned this big night. And it was like the perfect opportunity then for us to be like, okay, let's really go out there and see some of these things like Club Fear or Pumpkin Jacks that's been on the list every year for a while to see. And a lot of times we would come, and I see our friends from Beware the Dark Realm are in, and a lot of times we would go out there earlier in the season because they would do like a media night, maybe middle October or something like that. And some of those wouldn't be open yet, and we'd have trouble getting back to them. So this worked out really nice because we were able to meet up with everybody, see Tim's incredible work there, and then caravan and go with Ted and Rochelle and Rick and Nova and all kind of follow each other around and see all of these really wonderful. It was an absolute blast of a night on a whole.
So Ted, how did you what did you think going into that night? Were you prepared, or what were your thoughts going into it?
Well, hold on. You just like, there's so much to unravel with what you guys just went off on. So a couple of quick thoughts. Listen, the good thing is if you're tuned into this, Parks and Cons throughout the season in their podcast, they will kind of, there's periodic times where they give you an idea of what they're going to be doing. So if you're really interested in visiting different home haunts along the way during the season, you could follow along with them live, basically, in those times and during that month. But overall, I mean, I think, obviously with Southern California really kind of becoming more of a hub for home haunts, and so many home haunts, and with typically with so much traffic, I think that really kind of has to dictate a lot of what we get to see and what we don't get to see and all that stuff. So everybody has to be very strategic in the time. And, I mean, I do want to just point out, I mean, listen to the numbers of what Sean was talking about earlier, as far as how many stops these people went through is just insanity. So, I mean, so yeah, so you can easily go back and listen to all those podcasts, and they give you kind of reviews of but they don't usually outline spoilers or anything like that. So a lot of the information is somewhat vague. But today we're going to talk a little bit more in detail on the haunts that we saw. Now, Santa Clarita did kind of start to gain some momentum, I guess you would say, over the last few years, and so it was. Thanks. I know you mentioned Tim Fowler and the farm haunt. They were a staple in Burbank for at least the last couple of years, and so they were always a stop of mine. And they really kind of went with, like, it was a true, by definition, home haunt. And then when in Santa Clarita, more of a very detailed yard display. But thanks to Tim and especially all these other haunts that you guys had on your radar as far as what to see, it was like, okay, well, let's try to see if we can't hit these. And so I don't remember how I decided to do it, but I thought, okay, well, listen, this should be a fun night. And there was going to be a lot of our friends out there and stuff, and especially with Rick West joining in on the fun and everything, and Nova. It was like, okay, well, let's make a fun night out of it and do this kind of caravan type of situation. And the first stop of the night was Tim Fowler's home haunt, which is the farm haunt.
Yeah. And so with our people that are with us in the YouTube live, we are going to have some pictures of these going as we go along too. So that's kind of a goal in general we'll see in the weeks to come as well. So do you want to go ahead and start putting up the farm there? Sure. So it's interesting with the farm. I remember when Tim was, basically announcing that they were moving, and it felt like it's funny because this is our first experience for Carmel and I, our first experience of like this awesome home haunt moving. And it was like, oh, are they going to be able to still do a home haunt? And so I remember when he first was on moving, it's like, oh, I hope they're going to be okay. Will the neighbors be okay with it? But it felt a lot like, in basketball, like when a free agent, like is all of a sudden Tim was and the farm was a free agent. And it's like, where are they going to land? Where are they going to bring their, talents to? And they brought it to Castaic. And so, yeah, we had the good fortune of being there in the daylight hours first, which if you're tuning in with us on the YouTube live show, you can see Dr. Diablo's caskets and curiosities in the daytime there, which is a lot of fun as just a daytime display in and of itself. But I know one of the things to me that's been really consistent with the farm that I really love is the lighting. And particularly this year with just the reds and the greens and the blues. And if people do listen to our podcast when it comes to Halloween stuff, that I'm like a real sucker for colors. I think it's really, I just love when haunts use color to their advantage. And that's something that always has been kind of a part of the farm to me. And this year, I think with them being in a new location, they didn't do a walkthrough, but the display itself was just absolutely fantastic with so many little Easter eggs hidden within it as well. So many fun jack-o'-lanterns, the skeleton digging away at the grave and things like that, and just a fantastic spot all the way around.
Yeah, totally. And it seems it's really friendly during the day feeling. It doesn't have the scariness to it, but then at night with lighting and stuff, it does get a little creepier and stuff. And talking about the Easter eggs, I think probably the one that stands out to me the most, I didn't even catch on my own. Tim had to point it out, but there was a picture of, I believe it was him and his family in the Old West picture from Knott's Berry Farm, but like from a long time ago. So I didn't know that's what it was until he pointed it out. So totally lots of Easter eggs in that.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on something, Sean, you were saying too, as far as lighting goes, and themed entertainment lighting is such a huge component in everything that we do. And so when you have things like the farm haunt with some really cool looking lighting and all that, it's always such an attractive type of way to really kind of pull you in and make it feel like, okay, there's something, there's a stronger statement here, and especially with a yard display, because they aren't relying on boo scares or anything like that and talent running around or anything like that. It's just this really neat display. Sometimes you'll have animatronics or whatever like that, but displays like the farm haunt and all these others that are just beautiful with their lighting really makes, I think, a huge difference. And especially the Dr. Diablo facade here, and just a huge appreciation, by the way, to Tim for inviting us along to be a part of this. And it was a great way to start the evening.
Yeah. Yeah, that the sign, I keep looking at it as we have it up on the screen here. And I remember Tim putting, and he with the farm, I love they put stuff on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And so I'm always looking, and right now in the quarantine season, they've been putting a lot of stuff up. I know I mentioned him on one of the podcasts a few weeks ago, but it's always fun to see this stuff as it's going throughout the year, because at some point you'll get to see it, and the work that they've done there over the years. And that's the thing, the home haunts, again, once we've experienced, so we've talked about this before, but like the first year we went out to Restless Souls Manor, I mean, we had lots of talks literally minutes before just driving out there, because it's just like, oh my gosh, it's so far, how are we gonna, we're not gonna be able to hit these other haunts. It's like, no, we got to get out there. And then we get out there and we see it, and it's like, oh well, of course you can't miss this, and then because you've experienced it. And it's like, now Restless Souls Manor, there's no way we could ever miss it. And that's how the farm is as well. Is, if this year Tim said they moved 45 minutes further away, which for us they're about an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. So it's like, okay, well, we got to get out there. And then also going into kind of how we cover the experiences. The farm is one that we always know we're going to end up doing video of. We know we're going to do photos. We know it's going to be something, again, Where the Dark Realm, we have that experience. We know these are things going in. So when we're plotting our time, we know ahead of time of like, well, we're going to have to allot this much time, because we are for sure doing these things. They're not going to be missed. Whereas when they're question marks, ones we haven't experienced yet, we kind of get there and evaluate as we go. Something like last year in Anaheim, Turkey Boy, we had never experienced that before. Little Guru's Horror Shop, is that was Turkey Boy? But we didn't know. And it was a lot of fun, and we had a great time with it, but they didn't really seem to want to have video and things like that. They were kind of still getting things set up. And we just kind of left it as a walkthrough experience, and we had a good time with it, but we didn't really have a lot to kind of share with that. Where something like the farm is definitely one that we end up having a lot that we end up sharing usually afterwards.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned Restless Souls Manor, and to clarify, that one's out in Palmdale. That wasn't part of our Santa Clarita night. And they were dark in 2019.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why that's even further for us than Santa Clarita, but totally worth the drive and stuff.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't say that off the top, but we live in Riverside. So we are, for most of the things, driving around an hour. And then there's things that are further, hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours, things like that. But a lot of time, it feels like for us, always everything we cover is like an hour away, plus or minus, 15 minutes to a half hour. So, kind of, when we're trying to combine things, like when we're going down to San Diego, we need to know like how many things can we combine, or we're going to have to get a hotel room, but it's not really an option to come back, back and forth.
Let's see. And Tim in the chat said that you're making me blush. And then Grimwood Hollow said to him, that's just blood on your cheeks.
All right. So should we go to the next stop then?
Yes.
Okay. So then we jumped in the car. So the event started at the farm. So we had kind of an advantage there, as night fell, we were there and we got to see it at the day. We got to see it at night. Loved it. Then we jumped in the car, and Tim had plotted this all out, and Carmel had kind of checked with what she had. She's like, yeah, this is how I would have planned it out too. So that was awesome. And then we headed over to Pumpkin Jack's. And this is one that personally, and then I'll let the two of you speak, but for me, it's been like, literally every year I put my list of like, I really need to see this year. I want to say for like 2 years, it was one of my, I don't think I really put those in order, but like the 3 or 4 that I'm like, we really got to get there this season. But it just didn't happen because, again, the shortness of the season or the brevity sometimes for home haunts. A lot of times neighbors aren't so friendly to want, 3 weeks of home haunt nights or things like that. So Pumpkin Jack's has been one that's been open 1 or 2 nights, if I recall, or something along those lines. And we just haven't been able to make it happen. So I was really ecstatic when we were going to be able to make it out to this one. So I went into it with really high expectations and high hopes, was kind of mine. Now, Ted, had you heard of Pumpkin Jack's before?
I had not. And so it was just keeping an open mind to it. And we show up, and what's interesting, and I know this is something that you guys did not cover, and you talked earlier about what you don't cover and all that stuff. But I mean, there was like these really cool yard displays like all around this area. And so it just really kind of felt like this Halloween celebration, especially even over by Tim's house too.
Yeah.
And so no, Pumpkin Jack's was great, and didn't know anything about it. And you can kind of see by this initial picture, I'm like, I don't even really know what this is. Is this going to
Yep.
be like a pirate type of thing or something?
Yes.
And it really wasn't until we got out of line, because there's a pretty substantial line, and I don't know if we put a picture in it, but we went to the front of the garage and actually saw the facade, and the facade was of a recreation of the Myers house from Halloween. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so it was a whole Halloween film scene theme. And once we got in, I'm like, what the heck? And there was more. Well, first off, they jammed, any of these home haunts jam so much stuff into like these small little spaces, and so this was really action packed. But there was like these theatrical moments where they were kind of recreating scenes with like getting murdered by the phone cord and all of that stuff. And but they had one scene that I really liked, which was like this faux staircase that was a forced perspective type of thing. And I watched it later, like on Hollywood Haunter or something like that, did a behind the scenes walkthrough of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is how they did it. It was like over their washer and dryer or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so just super impressed with how they did it. And even out front too, in addition to the Myers house, they had this little sign that was like these movie credits. And I think I've seen that at a couple other home haunts. It is like, wow, that's really cool. Where like they're just kind of giving their friends and family credit for helping out on this whole thing. And it's just really detailed, action packed. I don't know how many Michael Myers they had in there, but several, and they were just kind of coming out from every corner. And so, I mean, this is the true definition of a walk-through home haunt, and with the especially now that we're seeing a more with the ideas of being attached to some intellectual property. So we've seen things with like trick or treat and all that stuff, and now with this, and you can see the Haddonfield Herald in this photo is like the Halloween Night Massacre and stuff. So the home haunters can do this, and they should do it, and I love them for doing it. And so thankfully we were able to check it out. I don't know if they're coming back again, but if they do, I will definitely go. If they don't, hey, what a great the stamp that they left for the folks that got to go through this incredible home haunt.
Yeah, and I believe they're not coming back. At least that was the last I heard. So it
Right.
made me even more glad we were able to at least see it this one time. I am so with you. Like the economical use of space was, because really the haunt itself was like inside the garage, and you're kind of twisting on yourself. And as you said, to the use of force perspective, the amount of Michaels, which I feel like they messaged me. I'm looking for it on Instagram. I'll look when Carmel talks here in a second. But I think they messaged me of how many Michaels were in there at one point, because I think we had talked about it. And this is one we did not do a video of this one, and so we did videos of most of the things we experienced that night, but we didn't. And the reason why was because it was very crowded. It was very busy. They were very kind to have us kind of in a press line to get in right away. And simply, we didn't want to hold everything up. It just seemed like this was going to be and they didn't request it,
Well, they offered for us to go back through and stuff, but
we felt bad.
With the long line. And it's always a little awkward for us when we are fortunate enough to be able to move to the front of the line, because in order to cover as much as we cover, it's just time-wise necessary, but it's also a little uncomfortable for us, and we feel bad. So we really try to not take up too much time or too much space or whatever whenever we're doing this, especially when there's a line. If someone's opened up specially for us, or we're there after close and they're fine with us still being there, then we take more time. But when it was at this one, only being the second one that we went to that night, it was prime time, crowd time. And so it was, we didn't want to take time to go back through. But Pumpkin Jacks, I think, was one of the biggest motivations from 2018 for making Santa Clarita the area that we'd go to the Saturday just before Halloween, because they had such a limited run every year. And it was one that we did really want to get back to. And so we're like, well, if we're going to do Pumpkin Jacks, we have to put Santa Clarita in that last Saturday, which is really the prime day if you're trying to do home haunts, of when most home haunts are going to be open. Some are only open on Halloween and some open earlier, but to really the majority of them are going to be open on that Saturday just before Halloween. And so knowing that Pumpkin Jacks was such a high priority for both of us to come back to, was a big part of why we early on we decided that that was going to be the plan for the Saturday before Halloween. And no, we had, like, our photos from the exterior weren't great that we had. And so I did not put one up, but it was a great exterior, and all the details that were in the maze, like the newspaper that we're looking at that you mentioned, the Hanfield Herald and stuff, are the things that make some of these so special, some of the home haunts so special, because there's so much love and care that goes into it, and all the detail and stuff. It's crazy. But yeah, this one, they had actors inside that, like you said.
So there was 12 scare actors in that footprint, is what they had messaged me after they had heard the podcast, which is just incredible. Like they were able to fit them in there,
and it felt like there was so much more.
Yeah. That's it's amazing. It was quite incredible.
But yeah, as far as that, part of that was that they had said that would be the last year, at least for some time. So yeah, it was like we had to fit it in, and we did. And so that worked out.
All right. And then we jumped in the car to head to Beware the Dark Realm. Now, this was a really unique situation for Carmel and I, because it's very rare that we see a home haunt twice. Usually they are open pretty limited amount of days, and it doesn't happen that way. But Beware the Dark Realm, always, it's really a neat thing and kind of an exciting thing, is they will like email us, and I don't remember the date, but it's early, all things considered, about like doing kind of their opening night and and it's like kind of like their press night, a press release kind of announcing what they're doing, raising money for it was Child and Family Center Domestic Violence Program. And so when at all possible, we like to try to get out there on that night. And a lot of times it's tough to kind of do that because most of the other home haunts in the area are not open on that night. But in this case, we were able to, I think we were out for LA Comic Con maybe or something like that. So we were able to get out there and see them on their opening night. And then as part of this night, we had the good fortune of coming back a second night. And it was kind of neat because we had already done our video, we'd already done our photos on that kind of press night, and we were able to kind of just enjoy it and really kind of take it in just as a fan that night. Now, Ted, for you, was this your first visit to Beware the Dark Realm?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So like after, parking like 6 blocks away or whatever, because it's right. It's crazy. You kind of walk up, and I mean, this a photograph that we've got up on the screen right now is showing a portion of the folks queuing in front of this large castle facade of Beware the Dark Realm, and the large amount of people standing in line. This is only a fraction of the folks that are actually out there. I mean, the line is just incredible. So we're very fortunate to be able to know Scott and everybody and be able to get in and kind of bypass the line here for this. But I was familiar with it because it was featured in Epic Home Haunts, the movie, and so knew sort of what went into this whole process. But listen, you can watch all the documentaries you want in the world on really most anything, but especially when it comes to haunts, no haunt is ever, in my opinion, like you can never really capture it on film. You really have to go through these things because it's such an immersive type of experience. And so, going into this thing, it's insanity. It really is. It's just very, very all-encompassing in terms of the level of decor that they put into this thing. It is everywhere. There's twists and turns. I don't even know where we were going. But the one thing I know is it was like super long. Like I was in there a lot longer than typical home haunts. So in other words, it gave a lot of bang for what was happening here. And so again, just with the level of like the whole basic theme for folks who haven't gone through it is obviously, if it's a castle type of thing that you can see, I mean, it's like this sort of medieval, kind of reminds me of an Inquisition type of vibe, with torturing and fantasy. There's like robed sort of like I don't know if they're vampire characters or whatever, kind of like that right there. And so we just went to a photo of it, and it's like this kind of like some sort of royalty. Very much, if anybody, not Scary Farm fans, remember like the old Gauntlet or the old Inquisition, things like that. So very sort of evil, medieval type of vibe is what you're getting. And you can tell that there's a lot of thought that goes into this. I know, the folks that put it together have really talked about how it's never quite the same from year to year to year. And so it's just like, oh my gosh, well, and Carmel just put another photograph up on the screen showing some of the detail where it's just filled with like these dingy, dark dungeons and characters that are like yelling and screaming at you and all this stuff, and very aggressive, but very full. The experience was full. You felt fulfilled. You felt like, hey, you know what, this was this very same type of feeling that typically comes natural when you go to a theme park attraction, right? Because that's what you kind of expect. But there's a handful of home haunts that are like this, where it's just you feel. When we walked out, I felt fulfilled, like, oh my gosh, this was a complete experience. So that was my sort of overall impression of this attraction.
It's something with talking about where like Beware the Dark Realm is one like a rotten apple or like a boot heel, where like I literally, every time we talk about them on a podcast or something, I get like a little like teary eyed, because I'm like, they're so good with what they do creatively, the visuals, but then on top of that, there is the charity component of what they're doing. These types of haunts, they're raising money and helping support their community. And then there's that third layer too, which what the gift that they're giving just to the people coming and all the fun. I mean, they are Halloween for the people that are in line. And so every single time I talk about any of those haunts that do that type of stuff at that level, it's really one of those things where it's like, how do people like this exist, that are just such good people, that are so talented, that are doing such nice things for all these people. And so as we're looking at this picture here, I mean, you see the queue set up. They've got skeletons hanging on the queue line there. Ted, as you said, I mean, you talked about like the Inquisition and Gauntlet and stuff like that. And I've mentioned that in our Scary Farm podcast, that I'm a real sucker for that theme. So this really hits for me. And as it really does feel a little different every year, or a lot different some years. And
well, let me tell you, not to cut you off, but let me tell you, because before we move away from it, you talk about the charity, the bottom line, all of these people, myself included, were crazy. These people are crazy. I mean, it is insanity that of the amount. This is pure passion. These people are doing this out of pure passion. It's their hobby. It's something they care deeply about. Beware the Dark Realm has been going on for decades now, I think. And I mean, and Rotten Apple has been there for decades, I mean, so I mean, these people are, and these types of attractions and these haunts that we're talking about, it's a whole different level of thinking, and it's they like I said, it's pure passion.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and so one of the things that I think stands out with Beware the Dark Realm, which we only know from having spoken with, I think Christian was one mostly, and stuff that we've talked to, but most of the actors, if not all of them, are like neighbors and stuff. So it is totally this way that they bring the community into it. And also I think part of how they get the support from their neighbors, which is also, I think, part of why they're able to open earlier than a lot, because their neighbors and their community are part of that haunt. They're the monsters, they're the scare actors. I don't think either of you even mentioned the fact that they have like sliders and
No.
scare actors walking the queue line
Yeah.
and sliding and scaring outside while people are waiting. So it's, yeah, you're brought into the story, into the scares while you're in line, which is incredible. And I mean, like I said, it's a whole neighborhood thing. There are people across the street who had their lawn chairs out and their ice chests, and everybody was just enjoying themselves and hanging out. And you have to be very careful driving down the street because there are sliders and everybody else kind of hanging out in the street and stuff. But the neighbors are pretty supportive, seemingly, and yeah, the fact that, well, last year, the according to the picture that we're looking at, it's a Child and Family Center domestic violence program that got the contributions and stuff. And that's how you get into the fast pass line, is to make donations and stuff. And so the fact that they're giving back in so many ways is incredible. And if you're looking at the photo, you can see that it's just a regular neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. It's not like they own a castle or anything.
Yeah.
So in the picture, you can look kind of toward the far left and see the other houses and kind of get an idea of what their yard is actually like when it's not Halloween. And it's incredible. It's crazy to think that this castle is just in the middle of this residential area. The work and the love is so incredibly crazy to me, but I love it, and I love that we've been able to experience it. Let's see. So Grimwood Hollow commented that Beware the Dark Realm blows away most pro haunts. Ron Apple said that they went for their first time last year.
Grimwood Hollow, you guys are insane in the best possible way. Long live Rotten Apple 907 and Beware the Dark Realm. Yes,
that's cool. So yeah.
So, and then we jumped in the car from there. And again, with all of this, you know, we're working against the clock. I want to say 10 p.m. was kind of when, and that's usually a standard time for when a lot of home haunts are closing. Some close 9. I mean, it can vary. Some, you know, can go a little later, but, you know, we were with all of these, it's like you want to see them and enjoy them, but you're kind of racing against the clock. And so we were rushing over then to Club Fear. And Club Fear is one like Pumpkin Jacks that I had heard a lot about, but I had never personally experienced, and was one I really had hoped to. They always had put some really neat images of their crazy clowns and things like that on Instagram, and be like, oh, I want to see this in person. So Ted, what were your thoughts at Club Fear?
I'll keep it kind of brief, because otherwise we will be here till 10 o'clock tonight. But what my impression was really just blown away. They had a whole little pre-show area that established this story. But even pulling up, you know, I know that Beware the Dark Realm had some too, but I mean, we pulled up, there's just people everywhere. There's clowns sliding all over the place. They're attacking people driving by. They're just regular neighbors. But there's so many people out in the whole neighborhood that it was really kind of, to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a Halloween celebration. And so finally get inside the attraction. And like I said, there's a cool pre-show. And then they did a little bit of a fun switch out type of bait and switch thing where you ended up going down a hallway and then you're forced into a dead end and you turn around and they switched out the room as a fun special effect. And you see that, you know, places before and stuff, but it's always impressive when you see a home haunter do it. And the talent were really into it. And it was just very sort of, it was felt like an adventure. The deeper you went into this thing, the more it got. It was just like, when's this thing going to stop? It was just crazy. And so we're seeing a couple of photos here of some of the things, and of course it's all clown themed there. But I thought, you know, they did a really good job of establishing, you know, it's kind of at the end of this kind of cul-de-sac that they're in. And it was just like this beacon of this home haunt that really kind of established what this neighborhood feels about Halloween. And I just thought that their energy was just over the top. And I thought they delivered incredibly well.
Agree. And the picture that Carmel has up right now is one of the things. I mean, I liked a lot of things about this one, and I was really glad we finally got to experience it. But the way they utilize these clowns in non-traditional clown settings, like, so we're looking at this clown like in a dungeon with a skeleton strapped to the wall behind the bars, and it's just like, it feels like, it's a Pirates of the Caribbean type scene, but there's this crazy looking clown with the white face and the big red hair. As you said, that I like the, just you keyed in on like the energy, and the actors are really aggressive. I mean, never touching you or anything like that, but really aggressive in their scares, and the way they use the color and the lighting to give these psychedelic looking characters these kind of non-traditional hiding spots, I thought was really creative and unique. And this is one that, again, we don't have experience with, so I'm not sure how much they've changed or how much it's the same from year to year, but I thought it was all quite inventive and a very different on the inside than what I expected on the outside, because it was kind of more of a bright clown colored type thing outside. Then you went in and there was kind of this spooky cavern type of a vibe to it.
Well, yeah, even how the colors and the lighting changed. I mean, the earlier clown was kind of the more bright, traditional type clown colors, and then the picture I have up before, she's kind of the false ending and forces you back that other way. And yeah, she's wearing these bright colors, and then we end up somehow in this dungeon scene. And I remember going through, and I was like, wait, what happened? Where did we end up? How are we here now? And it was just so fun because there's so much put again in the smallish space and stuff. But that was another one that had a really long line and stuff. So we were fortunate to be able to go pretty much right in. But yeah, tons of fun. And yeah, we had one of the scare actors come up to the car as we were trying to find parking and was scaring us while we weren't actually scared, of course, but was trying to scare us when we were still in the car before we'd even parked. So yeah, just tons of energy in that block, and it was lots and lots of fun.
The way they had it kind of roped off too, like you said, like the actors were coming out there like greeting us at the cars, but that was such a unique thing too, is it did feel kind of like that block party vibe again. And just, yeah, a really fun experience all the way around. And I would say this is about the time of night and is as general with a lot of these haunts where it's like, okay, we really feel like we have to start rushing even more because you're looking at the list and you're like, okay, where are we at with the, overall night? We've gone through and done, what is it at this point? We've done 4 and we're looking at the list and there's 4 or 5 more there. And we're thinking, okay, are we going to get to them or not? So we did jump in the car and we quickly made our way over to Coffin Woods Cemetery, which this is one that Carmel and I had experienced for the first time in 2018, I'm sorry, and had a little bit of experience with it. But Ted, I believe this was your first time there, right?
Yeah, and I think it was really cool. I mean, you could see it, there's a photograph here. There's tons of the kind of scare cloth that not Scary Firm typically uses, and a lot of black light type of thing. And it's kind of I mean, technically it's a home haunt because you do walk through it. You do go through an interior portion, but the bulk of it, I mean, I would say is out in the front lawn of going through this cemetery with these really cool upright skeletons and undead, and really kind of going through this. It's kind of set up like a not a cemetery, like a funeral that's taking place. They're carrying a casket and all that stuff. But then when you get inside, there's a little inside portion where I guess maybe it's a portion of their garage. Yeah, and we just are seeing a picture of this sort of black lit room that you go into, and it's a bunch of little baby dolls everywhere, and there's like a baby type of a creepy character in there that was startling people and stuff. And then upon exiting, you kind of end up passing like a big kind of pumpkin type of Halloween character. And, but it was a neat take on yard display in the sense that you can actually walk through it and really kind of plussing it by having these internal scenes within the small portion of their garage. And I thought it was a great stop. But the neighborhood that this is in is a little bit more quiet compared to the other ones that we were at.
where it was just like that. The other were very much like a block party type of feel. This was very quiet, and we were able to walk right up. This neighborhood probably is not as filled with home haunt fans as the other ones, maybe, I don't know, but it was fun, and the owners were very friendly and everything, and chatting with everybody. And so I thought it was a lot of fun, and I loved the especially in sort of that funeral, these upright skeletons that were kind of, their clothes were kind of just shredding off of them, and but they were just illuminated in this black light, but they had these red beaming little eyes, and it was just very, very cool, very, very sinister looking.
Yeah, and as you said, the hybrid kind of, it's really interesting because it is, it's aspects of a yard display, and I think it works well. I think this is a great one, and I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, where you would find like the little ones, kids maybe just standing and looking at it, but they weren't going to walk through it, and then the parents might trade off and go walk through it or something and kind of test it out and see, is this too scary? And it's kind of this perfect little hybrid thing there, where it does have it works well if you just want to stand there and take in the display and see the cool, like you said, their use of scare cloth is so great, and just the some of the creepy characters they have that'll have just kind of slight movements and head bobs and things like that. And then if you want a little bit more of a scare, you go inside and you face the dolls and the skeletons. I think there's a scene of the skeletons kind of drinking wine or champagne or something like that as well, and a really fun little one.
Yeah, totally. I love that the walkthrough portion starts outside, and that you kind of that there is a path, and it utilizes the space so effectively and stuff. And it's not a huge interior walkthrough, but the fact that it kind of starts outside is really cool. And the colors, the detail are lots of fun. Grimwood Hollows commented that Coffinwood is pure Halloween charm and fun. Love it.
It is.
So,
it is.
It's a really good way to describe it.
totally.
And I would say that Grimwood Hollow is also Halloween fun.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, very true.
But they're not in Santa Clarita, so
They're not. So that's for another day.
That's for another day. Okay, and so again, the Mad Dash, and I do remember this is the point. It's really in the transition from Coffinwood to Stony Point, where Carmel and I, because we were driving in our own separate cars. So you and Rochelle were in a car, Rick and Nova were in a car, Carmel and I were in a car. And we were starting to wonder, like, are we going to be able to fit this all in? And, are we going to go over the time here that's going to be allowed? Because at this point, we've still got 4 to go on this list here. And so we got to Stony Point, and this was the first I had, outside of just seeing it maybe on the SoCal Haunt list, this is the first I'd even heard of it. I was not aware of this one. It wasn't on our list of like must hit things. Just it was something that we weren't very well aware of. I don't remember having seen much. In fact, I don't even remember if they have social media. In fact, I don't think they do have social media. So it was a kind of a neat little surprise there that Tim had planned out for us, because otherwise we wouldn't have hit it. But your thoughts on it, Ted?
Oh, well, geez. I mean, we kind of walked up, and there was this neat kind of cemetery setup, and we saw there was like a sign that led us to believe, like, oh, okay, this is more than just a yard display of this, kind of, I think they had like a carousel or something that was out there in the front, and you had this creepy kind of Wednesday Addams.
She was so
girl,
good.
Just kind of out there cruising around among, within the fog. But we get to like the edge of like the lawn or whatever, and we've like, oh, well, there's like some sort of entrance to something. So they were definitely pulsing the groups at a time. And so by the time we made it in there, it was very, very tight. I had to crouch through this, but it was a very small walk through home haunt through like these sort of creepy living room Victorian era types of sets that were super creepy. We're looking at a photo right now of a couple little girls, little kids that were messing with us. And so you had these cute little kids, and let's face it, anytime a young little kid is trying to be creepy,
they can be very, very creepy. And so these kids were really taking to it, and it was just so fun to see their enthusiasm. And it was, they had a couple of animatronics in there, small animatronics, just like the typical things that you might see, like the rocking chair of like the creepy grandmother corpse and stuff like that. But it was short but extremely sweet, and I really, really liked it. And we did talk to the owners, or at least the neighbor of the owners, or somebody that was outside working at like a little table, and we told them about things like Midsummer Scream and all that stuff. So it was really neat to connect with them, and I hope they continue with it, because it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, as you said, they had the neat little yard display portion with a really great scare. I mean, all the kids were just great. Like I think we only saw children as scare actors. And to me, none of them were like distracting, as if it's like, oh, this is, silly. Like they were just all like in their roles and doing their creepy little thing and acting out. But then, yeah, the haunt itself was kind of like in their side yard, and it was just kind of this simple circle. I think they're only allowing like 2 of us at a time to go in, I think. And I know I was like crouched down like at half my height or something. Like it was very kind of claustrophobic, but in a good way, because it was almost like you're going through little peek-ins, because you're kind of walking a circle and then peeking into the room where there's some kind of nefarious character in there, trying to creep you out.
Kind of remind me of like a dollhouse, kind of walking through, or like
something like that. Yeah, cool vibe though.
Totally. And the kids were super amazing and lots of fun. And I had a comment, but I lost my train of thought.
Well, Medusa Rage 13 says creepy kids are the best kind.
Definitely. Oh, I was just going to comment that, yeah, you both had to crouch down. I think I was able to just stand my regular height going through the whole thing, because I'm super short.
In the video, we have a walkthrough video of this one, and Carmel's kind of ahead, and you can just see her having no issues walking through at normal height.
But anyways.
Okay, and now then was the real mad dash for the last 3. Next up, the Curse of the Treasure. And pull into the Curse of the Treasure, I think at that point, Carmel and I thought we weren't gonna make it, because it just seemed like we were down to, I think, an hour with 3 things left, and it just didn't seem like it was gonna necessarily happen at this point. And we, spoilers, we're talking about all of them, so it did happen. But at this point, we were, I think, kind of texting with I think we were ahead of you and Rick. When we got there, we were texting with Rick or something about like, should we talk to Shiver? Are they going to be okay with us coming over there, or what? But we made it to Curse. Now, before we got into Curse of the Treasure, though, you and Rick had found there was some really cool like yard displays that weren't quite done yet, but were coming together. Like there was one with all those like huge or like life-size figures in it and things like that in the neighborhood too.
By this time of the night, what I witnessed was the competitive side of Parks and Cons. So Rochelle, and my wife Rochelle, and I and Rick and his girlfriend Nova, we were just cruising, having fun. So all of a sudden, we're like, oh, look at this really cool home haunt. And the guys are out there, and it was a neat yard display, and they're just like out on their lawn chairs having beers or something. And Rochelle's taking pictures of them. And they're like, oh, we'll turn it on for you. And then Carmel is like, I'm going, I gotta go. It's just like, this like, whoa. So we stayed back a little bit to take some pictures of this really neat home haunt that these guys were turning on for us. And then so we made it up to the Curse of the Treasure. And I mean, hey, listen, you get up there, and really overall the front is a little bit misleading. You don't know exactly what's going on inside. And we talked to the homeowner, and I believe it was his son that was kind of the driving force behind the Curse of the Treasure. And it was a neat little pre-show intro that we saw. So there you have a little bit of it. And there's a little pre-show intro by a talking skeleton, very Pirates of the Caribbean kind of vibe. Tells you a little brief story. And really, once you enter, and Sean, you might be able to give a better sort of
summary of the different rooms, but there weren't very many. There was only a couple of rooms, but the first room was theatrically driven with this treasure map type of thing that was, we were looking at and all that. So, and then, but you do go through sort of the kind of the guts of a little bit of a ship type of thing where you end up getting accosted by this angry pirate, which I believe was the sun that is putting this whole thing together. But again, short and sweet, kind of a little bit more standard in terms of the length of a home haunt, as opposed to something that's like gargantuan, like, Beware the Dark Realm and stuff like that. Right. But this was fun. And, one thing that I want to kind of say that I didn't say before, but just in general, the great thing about a lot of these is they all commit to like their one sort of story, their one theme that they're going to go with. They commit to it and they really stick to it. And I love that, because that's certainly something that we do in the theme park world, right? You have your one maze and you kind of have to commit to it, whatever the particular theme is. And so you do see a lot of more independently owned professional haunts do what I kind of call the hodgepodge, which is, you've got one room that's aliens, the next room is clowns, next room is werewolves and all that stuff. But what I really appreciate with a lot of these home haunts and Rotten Apple, all those people outside of Santa Clarita included, is they commit to one centralized story and deliver and don't really deviate from that. And then I think Curse of the Treasure did that.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe they said that they kind of change out themes each year. And this is one where, again, I don't believe they have any social media, or at least none that I was aware of that I was able to track down. We had not heard of them before. It was one of those kind of neat surprises that Tim had plotted them in there, because I don't know that we would have gone there. It's just when you don't, have anything but a name on the SoCal Haunt list, it's hard to, get it to stand out as a priority. It's really was, though, a lot of fun inside. And one of the things that stood out to me the most, and I don't know if this is a thing they did all the time, because we only got to experience the one time, but as we were waiting to go into that little show scene, one of the kids came flying behind us and slid, and it just this slider coming down this walkway, because basically it was kind of like a side yard entrance into the garage. And then the haunt itself unfolded in the garage. So it was very disarming that we were just kind of waiting and we were just chatting. And then all of a sudden came and flew a really great slide, pulled up in a good amount of time. So there was no like danger or anything like that, but to see such a young person, it was clear that this was, it felt like this was a high school age person to slide so effectively and get such a good little scare in there. I thought was really neat. And then, as you said, them holding us kind of in that room to get the scene. We unfortunately didn't get video of this one, a combination of just running out of time, not knowing the people ahead of time to really organize things, and then it being quite dark in there. We weren't sure that we'd be able to really capture the theatrical elements.
Yeah, so we only have the 2 exterior photos on this one, but yeah, lots of fun. And the father and son both seem very friendly and happy that we were there and that we enjoyed it and stuff. But yeah, lots of fun and definitely a cool surprise. And by the way, if I didn't apologize that night, I apologize for my aggressive nature, because I didn't think I was being that aggressive. I was just trying to keep us on schedule, but so I'm sorry.
We felt like we had to duck and cover. I'm kidding. No need to apologize. But here's the deal. If you want to see this many attractions in a night, you do have to hustle. And the same thing kind of goes with anything like at Not Scary Farm or whatever. If you want to try to see all the mazes in one night at a theme park, you do have to hustle. And that becomes more difficult when you have a little bit larger of a group. It's easier to do when you only have 2 folks. If you've got a caravan of another car or 2 that you're having to deal with, going through different neighborhoods and all that stuff, that becomes a lot more difficult, especially since we are traveling, and these were all very close to one another. I don't think we drove more than 10 minutes or anything from one location to the next that I can remember. But some of them are right around the corner from one another. But anyways, no need to apologize. I was just razzing you.
No, but what you found there, the couple or the one particularly that you were looking at that we were not covering, or we didn't cover because they weren't officially open yet though. But that was one that stuck with me of like, well, this is why maybe we have to do 2 nights out in Santa Clarita, and where does it fit and how do we, execute that? I don't know.
I would imagine though that one was only open Halloween, right? They would if they had been open that weekend. And on Halloween we're always at Scary Farm, so the haunts that are only open on Halloween are super challenging for us because we've heard.
Well, we just don't cover those. Yeah.
Well, okay, it's challenging or difficult for me to miss them. Not that we would ever give up Scary Farm since we've been doing that since 97 or something, but we've had several reach out to us and want us to stop by, and they look amazing and they seem like very nice people. But even the haunts that are 2 nights or do run the weekend, it's tough. I mean, if we're trying to fit in as much as possible and stuff, and so yeah, the ones that only run on Halloween we're just never going to see. And so yeah, there's obviously more to see, so I don't know that doing a second night there would have necessarily worked even if we had the time to do it.
Yeah, we'll see. So though at that point though, we definitely were hurrying along, and we got to Shiver right around 9:30ish, if I believe somewhere where it felt like there was like,
well, this one I actually did like find out who the owner was and talk to them and make sure that it was okay, since the rest of our group was lagging behind Ted and Rick.
We were not in a race like some people. I'm kidding.
So I did check with them and they were fine staying open because they were right at their closing time. And I don't remember the owner's name, but he was familiar. I think he knew Rick anyway, so it was fine. But so we did have to check though.
So Ted, your thoughts on Shiver?
Well, Shiver was cool. You kind of started off. There's a neat, like, really fog, the Green Lake type of laser effect that you see a lot of other events and stuff. But what we found out was, so we get into like, and I mean, I'm not even sure what the theme was or anything like that. I'm not really sure it mattered too much. I mean, it was just this creepy, kind of violent, kind of cool vibe in there. But I remember we kind of get to this like living room area. And like they were able to sort of like alter part of the wall to customize it to create messages, which I thought was really cool. Then they started to, first off, I better preface it by saying they knew we were going through, and they knew it was the end of the night, and they knew us. And so one of the actors goosed me and started like cussing at me and like grabbing me. And so, but it was all within their sort of character, but it did segue more into what we would consider an immersive haunt experience. That not saying that like delusion people goose folks and stuff creep might, but it's very much like a creep kind of feel. And so it was a different way of thinking all of a sudden. Like all of a sudden there was like a shift in the thinking of like at least for me, anytime I'm going through immersive horror experiences, I kind of always have to like let everything down and just be very relaxed, to just go with the flow and sort of submit and commit to the experience. This, for that brief moment, that's kind of where my mind went, was just like, oh, okay, this is what this is. And of course, come to find that that's not what they always do. They're just really messing with us. But and really the experience ended not too long after that. I think you just kind of go through the exterior or the interior of this kind of weird, creepy house living room thing, and you've got these pictures of like a creepy clown that we're looking at. And so this is just kind of these generic kind of haunt type of feels, but it was driven by their creative actors, as well as that whole little customizable gag that they were able to do to create messages, bagging on Rick West and stuff like that too, So I thought it was a lot of fun and really clever on the way they could kind of change things out. And maybe that's something that they do, is listen to folks who are standing in the queue and get information from them, like their names and things like that. So that way they can go and create more of a little customized experience for them, which is really, really unique in the home haunt world. I have not seen anything like that. So I thought it was great. I thought that was friggin' funny.
It was a lot of fun, but that was one where they separated us. I think us women folk went in first. So it was me, Rochelle, and Eleonova went in first. So we did not have the exact same experience that you all had. And I don't know how we would have felt if we had. But yeah, it was totally customizable. And if I recall correctly, they also could reduce the scares. So like children could go through and stuff, and they just would ease up, or maybe not have scare actors at all. I'm not sure to what level, but Diane did share that their names were Gwen and David are the owners of Shiver.
Cool.
So yeah, it was awesome, and definitely, definitely lots of pro aspects to it and stuff. But it was a lot of fun, and yeah, you guys all had a much more intense experience than us women folk did. So.
I really like the fog lake thing, and I know more and more people are using it, but I really love the fog lake. The first time we saw was at Hobbs Grove, and we still haven't seen one anywhere like the one at Hobbs Grove, because it was like massive. It was like, this big old piece of a field that we were going through in this kind of fog water or whatever. But I did really like this here. And the actors, as you said, were really, they're really all out in terms of stopping you and kind of creating scenes. The other home haunt that we've seen do that, not the goosing part, but the like really kind of stopping you and really like, let's take 3 minutes in this scene and talk, is Reichland Asylum out here in Riverside. It's really interesting because you're going through a room and you encounter a character, and the character will keep you there and have a conversation with you and know your name and talk to you, and hey, Sean, so what are you doing in these parts? Do you need your, meds? Are you going to be staying with us in the asylum for a while? And Shiver had those elements as well. And because they definitely were familiar with Rick, they really played to him, and in particular were giving him a hard time and interacting with him. But it was just awesome seeing how much they went out of their way to kind of customize the experience. And it felt like, if we went through it again, it could be a totally different one, depending again on who you are with.
Exactly.
There's a few comments there.
Okay, so Tim said they put on an awesome show. Grimwood Hollow said Shiver was a blast and definitely some pro level stuff. Tim commented, "You left feeling dirty in a good way."
Yeah.
And then,
you did.
yeah, you guys had a different demeanor about you when you came out of there. It was funny. And then Will is asking, when you say Fog Lake, do you mean laser swamp like in the depths? And
yes,
exactly like that.
Yes.
Yep, definitely. All right, and then we're off to our last stop, and this one is a yard display, which definitely simplified things in terms of being able to get into it and see it. Yard displays are always obviously a lot easier to cover than walkthroughs, just because you can walk up there and see everything there, and there's no hybrid element or anything like that to this one. And so the last stop of the night was Clowntown. Thoughts, Ted?
Yeah, this was fun. I think this is run by Javier Cano. And this was just a classic, fun, sleek display. And when we're talking, you could see there's a picture that we're looking at right now of some of the display, and just really cool lighting when we're talking about lighting earlier. But these are just a bunch of creepy clowns, part of like a circus, because I think there's a big top sort of facade that's kind of covering the garage area. So really just the way the yard kind of wraps around the side of the house too. So it's kind of like an L shape. And so there's a lot of fun displays throughout the whole thing. And it's just a very clean yard display. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah. And it's funny because where we started, I was talking about just, the lighting and loving the lighting at the farm. And this is another one where there's just these bright colors, greens and reds and purples. And the figures so many of them, you were waiting to see if it could be an actor, because they just looked like they could be, this actor just kind of standing perfectly still, waiting to just kind of give you a little pop when they walked by. But they had that fun carnival feel, a very straightforward theme. This is the type of one that I can take a long time looking at, even as simple as it is, just because I love all the colors. I love being able to, take 15 pictures of the same clown in different angles. And then right next to him, it seemed that they were kind of spreading out, because the neighbors next door were kind of picking up with a little bit of a clown and carnival theme as well, which we didn't end up counting them as a stop for us, but they very well could have been, or maybe would be in the future. But it was kind of neat that it seemed like it was almost like this infectious thing that was starting to maybe spread to some of the other local houses. Because this one also, as you said about Coffinwood Cemetery, Ted, it was very quiet neighborhood in general.
Yep.
Like when we
Yes.
arrived, I think we were pretty good about like whispering and
Well,
stuff.
yeah, we got there after their official hours, but I think Rick reached out to them, or someone reached out to them to ask them to leave things on, because we were after hours at that point.
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely very cool looking and different aspects to it. And the fact that the neighbor was joining in and had also really good lighting and stuff was all really, really cool and really impressive. And it was nice that the way they fell in the scheduling, they were last, because then with a yard display, obviously it's easier to ask them to keep the lights on than it is to ask them to keep actors around and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, definitely really cool. And I believe you mentioned
the name
Javier, and then Marissa, I guess is
Rotten
Yeah.
Apples. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yay,
Yes.
Javier and
Yes.
Marissa. Yeah.
Yes.
And so that concluded our haunt hop for the night, which, as I said, that was the most walkthroughs we had done in a night for sure. I'm not sure what the previous high was, but I don't really need to look it up, because I just know we've never gone through that many different home haunt walkthroughs. We've done more yard displays in a night, but we haven't gone through. Usually doing 3 or 4 home haunt walkthroughs in a night is a pretty good night, all things considered. So this was really an epic run. And again, huge thanks to Tim Fowler of the farm for getting it all set up. I mean, I remember when we got in the house and he had like the paper there that had it listed in what order to do them. And it was just such a fun way to spend a night. And for us, and I know, Ted, you have the same ritual as us of spending Halloween night at Scary Farm, but this was one of the most Halloween things I felt like we've done in a long time. I mean, we do all these Halloween things, obviously, every season, but meaning it just felt like it was Halloween, being at like this party and all these nice people are there, and then we're going out and running around like trick-or-treaters to all these different houses to see, their visuals and things like that.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I got that same feeling too, especially going from one neighborhood to the next, and seeing how everybody's doing it. And see, every place we went to, we did at least see and if not talk to the owners. So we're seeing all these different people, and some of the neighborhoods were more packed than others, but it did feel like a very traditional type of Halloween for sort of adults, right? But in a fun, still keeping the childhood, childlike type of vibe, but by doing something that is just the lighthearted fun of going and getting spooked by these different places and stuff. So I mean, it's just like I was saying before, we were looking at a picture earlier of our group, and having Rick West along, this is the guy that, creates things like Hall of Shadows, right, for Midsummer Scream, and so getting inside information along the way as far as, what that process is like, on what type of home haunts get in there and all that stuff. So that was really, really cool. And, like I was saying at the top of the show, this is really a perfect example of witnessing firsthand that branch of the haunt community, and it doesn't matter if it's home haunt, if it's yard display, if it's theme parks, if it's independent haunts or whatever. They're all different branches of the same tree, and so it's really, really fantastic to see that and participate in it. And thank you guys for allowing us to go, and of course thanks to Tim for putting that together too.
Well, yeah, and obviously thank you for coming up with the idea even for this show as well, because it is a really neat way to kind of look back at it and hear your thoughts on these, mazes, and also for us to give a little bit of the behind the scenes things. Because I would say, kind of in closing on these, is to me this night most kind of embodies what is kind of the good and bad of everything we do with Parks and Cons, which is the good side is that we see a lot, and you just never know when you see something that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we got to see that. I've said that a bunch of times about like different kids shows at Disneyland and stuff. There's things that we've covered there where it's like, I would have never seen the show in a million years, but because we need to cover it for, our stuff, we go and we're like, oh, it's not bad. It's not something I would do again, but maybe we'd bring, let our niece know or something like that. But on this night, it's like, would have loved to spend twice as much time at any one of the stops, if not more. But that the price to pay to see all of them was just go, 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 go. And so I know that's something as we talk about the future and kind of if we would ever try to do 100 again type of thing, it's that thing of like, yeah, it's a big cost to not see everything. But as she says no and stuff, you experience firsthand, Ted, she's the one that gets really competitive about the thing. So it's like, I was the one this last year because we were just going, and she schedules all these nights, every work night, and I'm getting up at 5 a.m. and she's scheduling, and that's fine. And she's scheduling. But then when we got to 2 weeks out and we're at like 65 or 70, that's when I was like, well, we could get to 100 now. So I pushed for the last bit, but yeah, she's the one that sets up the schedule that we went. I mean, we went something like 32 nights in a row or something, like literally every single night for whatever it was, 30 some nights. Like I went to work and then we went out to some sort of Halloween thing and then came back. So, but you can't say how much we appreciate all the work of all the home haunt people. And I do think particularly in this time of quarantine and uncertainty, it is to me the most hopeful thing in anything that we do, because as we've talked about, I know already, is there's just no way that this community of home haunters won't do cool things regardless. Maybe some have to go dark, maybe some can't do walkthroughs, maybe nobody can do walk, we'll see, but there will be cool things out there to see on Halloween night.
Even if we're in the car wearing masks, there'll be stuff to see.
Yeah. So that makes me feel good, because I know that's something, when do we go to a convention? I don't know. When does Disneyland? I don't know, what, all these things, but we know all these creative, good people, and we see, and that's why I love highlighting some of those in the Dose of Hope and stuff, is there's going to be cool things, whether, you're driving by in your car or you're distant 6 feet from each other or whatever else. There's some really cool things there that we know this community will do. So huge thanks to every home haunter, every family member, friend, a kind neighbor. If you're a mean neighbor to a home haunter, then not to you, but the kind neighbors that, all the people that put together this stuff. It's just, can't thank them enough, because it's incredible the amount of entertainment that they supply and just the smiles that are on people's faces of all ages because of the work that they do.
Totally.
No, I totally agree. They are Halloween. They are
totally
what make Halloween. I mean, you have the candy, we've got the costumes for the little kids and all that stuff, but for everybody else, these yard displays, these home haunts, to me, that's what Halloween's about.
Yeah, that's whenever I see somebody say something in some sort of forum about Halloween's canceled, like I can't even talk to that person. I don't know. I don't understand how somebody could say something like that, because these people, that's not possible for these people. So if you only go to horror nights or you only go to scare, well, then I can understand thinking that, because who knows? I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen, but I could see being pessimistic or something like that. But yeah, if you see all the things that we've seen over the years, it's just not an option. So again, huge thanks to everybody for not just this night, which all of you involved in this night, particularly thank you, but just across the season, because as Ted said in the open, of all the kind of inspiration and the reason he leaves room in his schedule to see these things and stuff, is just so much good stuff out there. So I see we have a couple comments.
So Grimwood Hollow said, thank you so much, Parks and Cons and Ted, for these awesome shows during a crazy time. We need this. Cheers.
Oh, thank you.
We'll come back to you in just a sec. Yeah. Tim said, we're doing it again this year, party bus.
Okay.
Cool. Sarah said
from
Reichland said, hell yes, there will be something to keep Halloween alive.
Nice.
Diane said, we are always glad to see you guys. Thank you for doing this. And then Diane also said, no way Halloween will happen one way. No way Halloween will happen one way or another.
Definitely. That's a
Yes.
great comment too. So thank you. And thank you again for everybody that's in the chat there. So to go back to Will's question there, and we talked about next week, we will be back again, same time, YouTube Live. If you are listening on the audio format, you can join us if you're interested. We are going to try and do this whole picture thing. Ted has some pictures maybe that he'll be able to share with us next week as we do a walk in the park Halloween version, not Scary Farm version of walking around some parts of Ghost Town there. So if you've not listened to our other two podcasts we've put up so far, the idea is really taking a land from a theme park and starting somewhere and talking a little bit about what's there and what was there in the past, a little bit of the history and things like that. And so all of a sudden, when we were meeting this week talking about future shows, it kind of different things Ted was saying and Carmel was saying, it's like, wait, why don't we do an official walk in the park part of that series, but specifically with the person who, if you go back in our earliest archives, one of our first 30 podcasts was Ted doing a tour at Knott's of the Ghost Town streets, and it's to this day one of my favorite Halloween memories. Even though it wasn't on Halloween, it wasn't at night, so I know that your knowledge and your love of that place and that event, that you'll be able to really bring it to life just by talking about it. So I'm really excited about next week's show.
I'm very excited about it, and I think it'll be fun, and I think it'll be, you want to talk about escape a little bit, kind of get our minds off things. Today we thought a lot about navigating through the streets of Santa Clarita, and next week we'll talk a little bit about the streets of Ghost Town.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, Will said, oh, I love it. So
cool. All right, so thank you again all for tuning in for a little haunt fix this Thursday night. Again, we've got a lot of shows planned for the future as we continue to navigate these strange times. Please stay safe out there. Keep doing what you're doing to make sure that we're all in as good a place as possible as we go forward. If you are with us in the live show, please, if you don't mind, again, give it a like, subscribe. We'll have lots of Halloween content. Our goal is to see the most Halloween of anyone and share the most Halloween of anyone. I don't know if we do it or not, but that's the goal of trying to do that. So we'll have lots more content, hopefully, that you'll enjoy as the season progresses here. Also next week, we will have, if you're interested in conventions, we will have our other series, Stories from the Floor. We'll have Carrie Dixon on, who's the editor in charge over at the San Diego Comic-Con unofficial blog, talking about some of her favorite Comic-Con memories, and then a couple other little surprises coming down the line as well. If you're not already a part of our Parks and Cons crew, if you're interested, on Patreon, we have bonus episodes on all sorts of different Halloween things, convention things, theme park things as well. You can find those there on our homepage. If you've also not done so, please consider leaving us reviews wherever it is you find the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and all the rest. If you want to follow along with us on social media, you can find us at Parks and Cons on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, YouTube. Whereas before I said lots of videos there if you're looking for something to do during these quarantine times. Wrapping up our Santa Clarita Haunt Hop with Ted. Until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.
Night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great week. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Bye-bye.